Welcome to Be Truly Heard with me, coach and voice expert Anne Leatherland. If you're a woman in business looking to speak with authority, warmth and authenticity, this is the podcast for you. We'll explore valuable personal growth strategies alongside vocal skills, so you can overcome confidence barriers and communicate what's inside. Your voice matters. It's time to be truly heard. Hello and welcome to this episode of Be Truly Heard with me, your host, Anne Leatherland. And today I'm delighted to welcome Katie Skelton, an email strategist whose work sits right at the heart of what we explore on this podcast. After many years of writing highly technical bids in the TV industry, Katie made a powerful pivot into copywriting and later into teaching email strategy. Along the way, she discovered something that many people miss. Our written voice and our spoken voice are not separate. They're two expressions of the same identity. Now, I'm revisiting this idea today because I have touched on it before, but Katie's approach is unique. So this is exactly what we'll explore today. How Katie found her authentic voice in email, how she helps others to do the same, and how that voice translates into confident, connected speaking. So Katie, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me. What a lovely introduction.
Oh, thank you. You're very welcome for that as well. But having worked with you, I know that it's all true and how wonderful your work is. So I'd love to begin with this. Tell us a bit about that background. What led you out of that, I suppose, must have been quite high pressure TV job into copywriting?
So the short answer is I was forced into it through redundancy, which I think is the story a lot of people have at the beginning of their starting their business. But the slightly longer version is, so I worked in the TV industry for I think 15, 16 years. And then I was made redundant in my second round of maternity leave. So when I was 6 months into my second round of maternity leave, but I'd always wanted to run my own business. I'd always loved writing, but I'd never been brave enough. It never felt like the right circumstance. It never felt like it was the right time to take the risk of giving up a salary and a decent salary and flexibility and stuff. Like I had all the things I kind of needed really from my job. So there was no impetus to go, I'm going to take this big risk. But then when I was made redundant and got some redundancy money that gave me a bit of a buffer, I thought, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to have to do it now. My children were both small and I could see a future where I was going to need to or want to be at school sports days and assemblies and all of the stuff and be able to do pick up and drop off without asking permission and all of that stuff. So I could see a little way into my future, and I thought this is the opportunity to pull the trigger and actually go for it. So yeah, that's how it started. And then it's just been probably about 782 mini evolutions of me and my business since 2018.
I love that. I can identify with that. And also what a big step it is to just move out of your salaried position and to say, I'm going to set up my own business. I did that as well. And it was a big risk, but it was the best thing to do. And I also had young children at the time. And since then, just like you know, my own business has evolved many times as we've gone through the years. So talk me through the move to email then and how email has become important for you.
So as with about 90% of everything that I think has happened to me in my entire life, I feel a bit like it was an accident. I don't know if that's true or whether I'm just very quick at making decisions that are right for me and therefore it was always coming, but I just didn't see it coming because it happened quite fast. But I've generally had like these kind of pivotal moments in my life where I've made a change, I've made a decision, I've done something that feels big or different and it's worked out well. Whereas a lot of people will have a plan. I don't feel like I've ever had a plan, not a proper plan. So I was doing copywriting, so done for you copywriting, first in the broadcast industry, which soon got a bit boring. But I left the industry and I knew loads of people. So the sensible thing to do was to tap up my existing network and work with people who already trusted me, had already seen what I could do. But then I got a bit bored of it. And then I kind of pivoted a couple of times into different industries and soon realized that actually it wasn't the subject matter that was the problem. It was the fact I was writing for people, and it took away my love for my own writing because I was so focused on delivering for other people. I didn't have the time or the headspace or the energy to put the real passion into my own writing anymore. So then I went on a bit of a kind of journey of discovery, during which time I set up my email list. So I read a book by a man called David Hyatt, which is called Do Open, which is all about the power of email newsletters. And I read the book in a day. It's a very small book, but it's a really good book. Read the book in a day and then launched my email newsletter the next day. And that started the love of writing emails. Just from going, oh, I see what I could do with this. So I started writing emails, started talking about them on LinkedIn, started growing a bit of a following or a subscriber base. But I still wasn't specializing in email. I was writing emails for myself and I was still writing some emails for clients. And then I had a conversation with someone and he was just like, you do emails really well. Why are you not just specializing in that? And I went, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And I was floundering at this point. I didn't know kind of what I wanted to offer. So that was just a moment of clarity where I went, okay, yeah, fine. I'll just hang my hat on that. And the rest is history.
It's great. I mean, it's interesting how somebody's objective view can help us to clear up where we're going and help us with directions. And again, I can identify with that. So when did you first realize that your written voice and your spoken voice were actually part of the same identity, do you think?
I think when I first started getting replies to my then weekly emails, so 4 or 5 years ago, where people would reply and say, I laughed out loud at this and I heard you saying this in your voice. And I thought, that's interesting. And I never really thought of it as a voice or a messaging or a position. Like, I didn't think of it from a marketing perspective. I felt like it was just a connection thing. I was connecting with people through my writing, and I didn't realize quite how easily I could get across my spoken voice in writing. So the people on my list early on were people who knew me. They were family, friends. They were people who had worked with me previously, so they'd seen how I speak, and they were hearing my emails in my voice. So I don't think I ever consciously noticed it properly at that point. But I definitely, now looking back, I can see that that's when people first started almost saying, this is in your voice.
That's a really interesting one as well. I read a book at one point, I think it was called The Voice Within or something like that. I'll look it up and maybe put it in the program notes. But it was all about the different ways that we hear our own voice and other people's voices. And in our heads, when we read a book or something and we hear it in our own voice, it's almost as if we've said it. So I imagine this is part of that phenomenon, really, that in your emails, when people say that they can hear you, it creates that level of authenticity because they know you and they do hear your voice. And you're very witty and very funny. And I love your posting on LinkedIn for that. And I love your emails too, I ought to say. I'll try not to be too sucky up here, Katie, but it's all going...
carry on.
It's all going really well.
Half you saying nice things to me. It's fine.
And so what do you think creates that level of authenticity then?
So I think a lot of it is to do, I've been exploring the idea with myself and with clients recently of ideal conditions. So the ideal conditions to do the thing that you can already do, But there are a lot of in the world of online business, at the risk of sounding like ChatGPT, in this ever-changing business landscape, there's a lot of people selling blueprints, 10-step frameworks that you must follow to the letter, and or templates and stuff like that. And I think that's how people lose their voice. And I talk to people a lot about noticing what your ideal conditions are for creating, particularly writing, because that's what I teach people to do, but creating in a way that feels really you. And I've noticed, so I write an email every day, and I tend to write it late-ish on the day before, because I think that helps me channel when I write. A, I'm under a little bit of pressure, and B, it's usually fueled by something that I'm feeling in the moment. I've just experienced it that day or the day before, or it's something that's been going around in my mind, so I'm feeling passionate about it. And I think that, like, if you ask me a question and I answer it, I'm much more likely to be animated than if you ask me a question and then tell me to go away and record a video in 2 days to respond to the question. When I'm responding as I'm feeling the response, it's more likely to come across authentically, because I'm actually genuinely feeling the stuff, and the words are more likely to come out in a way that's me, rather than it feeling guarded or rehearsed in any way. So that's one thing that I have noticed about myself, that's how I create best, and that's how my emails feel like they're kind of full of all the stuff that I want them to be full of, because they genuinely are.
I think that's an important point as well for speaking, is that we have to be in the thought. There are our thoughts, our emotions, then our actions, and then the beliefs we have about ourselves. But if the thoughts and the emotions work, it puts us into the place where we can deliver. We hate that word, don't we? Deliver, but where we can give a good account of ourselves. And we were chatting, weren't we, about speaking in public. So just moving this now from the page and from the email into speaking, because you do a fair bit of that as well. You discovered improvisational speaking after spending some time doing stand-up comedy. So I'd love to know a bit more about that. What has taught you about speaking freely and trusting yourself on stage?
Okay, so I learnt this lesson quite early on. I think I was in my early 20s when I did a stand-up comedy course, and the man who was running the course was amazing, and all of the stuff that he taught us I've taken into my writing quite a lot. But one thing I really noticed was that scripted, rehearsed, rigid speaking does not work for me, to the point where I thought I hated public speaking until about 2.5 years ago, because I thought that's what you had to do. I thought you had to create a slide deck, rehearse it until you were so sick of the sound of your own voice that you didn't want to do it anymore, and then get up there, feel really nervous, stumble over one of your rehearsed lines, ruin everything in your own head, and then realize that you have messed it all up. This is the story I was telling myself. What I now realize is that I just perform much better under improvisational circumstances. So stick me on a stage and people can throw questions at me for 2 hours and I'm fine. I would stand up in front of 5,000 people now and do that. But if you told me to rehearse a 20-minute slideshow, or whatever we call them these days, presentation slideshow.
Hopefully not a slideshow.
If you ask me to rehearse something like that, where I have to kind of drill the performance, it takes all the love out of it for me, and then I just don't want to do it. So I don't know if I've actually answered your question there, but that's how I realized that improvisation was my style of presenting, and now I love being on stage.
And I think there's a lot to be said for that. I mean, obviously, there's an element of knowing broadly what area you're going to be working in.
Yeah.
And I very much do the same. It took me a long time to trust myself. I think it depends on context. So, for instance, if we're doing something like a TED talk, we probably need to have it scripted in the first instance, and then improvised and made more free as it goes on, so that we can stay in the time frame. That's the main thing. I only ever did one talk where I scripted the whole thing and timed it, and it was with slides, and it was for something I did at the British Voice Association, and I was so nervous, I can't tell you. I was so nervous, I couldn't eat for an entire week. And now I don't take that approach. What I do is I prepare it. If I have slides, they've mainly got little icons on just to jog my memory, and I talk freely around it and get people involved. And so I agree with you. I think it works much better once we trust ourselves to actually call on our own knowledge and experience, and then interact energetically with the people in front of us. And so it's a definite trust thing, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also it going back to the kind of trusting your expertise and your knowledge, the more secure you are that you are an expert. And I don't really like the word expert, but it's
sorry, I've got it on my label.
It's sensible. It's a sensible word to use here. But if I know that somebody is going to ask me about sales, marketing, email, writing, then I can rock up and do something completely unprepared. But equally, I just think it's a really good showcase of knowing your stuff, being able to just stand up and confidently talk about the thing that you believe in and that you know about is actually much more of a trust building thing than being able. I could create a slideshow. Why do I keep saying slideshow? I could create a presentation. Fuck's sake. I could create a presentation now on like some random city in like Yorkshire and do a presentation on it. It doesn't make me an expert in that subject. It just means I can research it and deliver a presentation.
I know, exactly. I mean, the worst thing is as well, Katie, isn't it, is when people just read the slides. I absolutely hate that. Why bother? Just send people the slides. But people want some of us, and part of that is knowing ourselves and knowing our audience as well. And so how do you adapt your voice, do you think, across different contexts without losing that authenticity? Whether writing an email or speaking from a stage, I mean. So how do you keep those two in parity?
So with writing, and I was talking to a client about this yesterday, I always will have one person in mind when I'm writing an email. And it doesn't have to be the same person every time. I said to my client Phil yesterday, there's probably been 400 odd people I've cycled through, but every email I've got a specific person in mind. And when I was selling to Phil, I wrote a week's worth of emails that were directly aimed at him because I knew he was on the edge of working with me. And so I was like, right, okay, I'm going to write every email aimed as if I'm in a conversation with Phil. And it worked. And he knows this now. So if he's watching this, he knows that that's what I do and what I did. So that's how I adapt to almost different kind of triggers isn't the right word, but motivations for leaning in and buying from me. Because if I have you in mind, I might phrase things in a slightly different way to how I would phrase things to somebody else. But only because of what I know about you and how I know that, like, you might be struggling with something different to what someone else is struggling with. And so I know that talking about the thing that you want is going to be more effective when talking to you. But it's still me as if I'm talking to you. It's so it's still authentic me. It's just aimed very specifically at specific people. When I'm in a room of people, I try and make things as interactive as possible. I will interact I'll pick up on someone doing something in the room. And it doesn't even have to be people asking questions or me trying to go, give me a show of hands if you've ever done this. Like, it doesn't have to be forced interaction. A thing I did a while back, there was a dog in the room. And I was talking and the dog was wagging her tail and it was like hitting on the chair and you could just hear this thumping noise, and just a little sideways glance on a comment about that, it just helps connection with people. And I've noticed your dog is obviously not really a way of connecting with people, but it is, because it shows that you're yes, you're in front of a load of people, but you're also connected with individuals in the room. So I try and be interactive, start little conversations. I'll make comments about if someone's standing up and going to the toilet, I might make a joke about it. Or I'm always looking for little things that I can comment on. So it's almost like this kind of underlying commentary that is layered underneath the main point of what I'm doing. That sounded very long-winded. Hopefully,
no, it's all right. I can link that to your stand-up comedy training. You know, where are you off to as they go off to the ladies' room?
Yeah, exactly.
Only in a slightly less polite way sometimes in comedy. But yeah, it's that personal thing of actually engaging with the people. And if you can make them laugh or smile, then even better. So I think it's very powerful. Oh, well, you know what? I could speak to you all day, but I can say that before I met you, Katie, I hated writing emails. I did it because I thought I had to. And now I've worked with you on a couple of different things. I'm finding that so different. And I said to you earlier, I've even put something in my calendar saying email writing practice for this hour. And practice is so important. It's so important with voice, and it's just as important with writing, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I know we touched on this before we started recording, but one thing that I've really found from writing every day is not only has it made me more secure in what my voice is, it's made me more secure in my opinions and my ideas, and I can articulate. So 2 years ago, if somebody had said to me, or 3 years ago, if somebody had said to me, can you teach me to write in a way that has the same effect as your writing has on me? I would have been like, I can't. I don't know how, because this sounds really big-headed, but it comes so easily to me that I don't know how to teach it. I can't sit in front of you and say, oh, this is how I do it. But because I've been writing consistently every single day for 2+ years now, I know what my processes are. I know what my frameworks are that I work to. I know the structures that I can then say, this is something you could try to a client. And that's how I can now teach people to be more confident with their writing and actually learn to love it, rather than thinking, oh, I really don't want to do this. So it's just made me really structured, but in a really nice, confident way. And I just know that everything I say is what I really mean, rather than it just being in my head and not quite sure whether it's my opinion or something that I've been fed from the outside world that I think should be in my opinion. The power of putting stuff on paper is, well, powerful.
It is, and I'm beginning to understand that myself. I've always been okay at writing. I mean, I was good at that at school, going back years and years, but I've always been too much of a perfectionist. So I'll always try and edit it as I go along, and it's not helpful. And so I'm learning to be a bit freer and more spontaneous with that, just as we were talking about being more spontaneous with the speaking as well. So there's a lot in this, and we do have these transferable skills. There's a part of us that we can write with, and another part of us that we can speak out to express ourselves with. And the closer they are, the more authentic we're going to be to others, and the more influence, if you like, or the more impact we're going to make. And so thank you so much, Katie, for sharing all that with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Where can people reach you if they're interested in finding out more?
Okay, so unsurprisingly, the best place to find me is my emails. So my my website is, if you just look for Little Green Duck, that's my business name. So that's probably best, and then that will take you immediately to an email sign-up form, because all roads lead to my emails.
Your emails. Okay, and we'll put a link in the programme notes as well.
Amazing, thank you.
Katie Skelton, thank you very much. And thank you all for listening, and I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to Be Truly Heard. If something landed with you today, share it with a friend or leave a review. It really helps more women to find their voice. Want to go deeper? Join my email list for exclusive tips, resources, and invitations to events. You'll find the link in the show notes. Until next time, remember, your voice is powerful. Let's make sure it's truly heard.